Alright, today we're going to be doing the coloring of this. Last time we did the inking stage of it. Now we're going to go ahead and cover the coloring of it. So to start with, underneath of our inks layer, we're going to click on this layer and then click on the Create New Layer button. It'll create a new layer underneath of our inks layer. Remember, we want it underneath of that layer. I'm going to call it Color. And then we're going to just basically zoom in. Now the way that I do this is that I will choose my color, say like the white, and then I'm just going to trace out the shape underneath of the inks line. That way, like let's say we hide this layer, you can see how it's underneath of this, so you can't see it. But you can see the, where there isn't anything. And another thing I generally am going to do is delete. So I'm going to click on this, click on the bottom part, and then just, we're going to go ahead and trash it. And to do that, so you click here, hold down Shift, click here, and click the trash button, and then we're going to delete all those swatches. I'm going to make that white. The same thing over here. I'm not going to tell you, what I'm pressing. You should have already watched the pen tutorial, and to give an idea, what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. So, I'm not going to say that I'm holding down Alt here and then clicking and dragging to fill it in. One nice thing about doing the coloring is you don't have to be very careful about where you put your points or how accurate you make all your lines. So there's definitely that. One of the reasons why I delete everything is because I find it easier to make my own basic swatch colors, and having less colors in here allows you to just limit yourself down to the default ones, because a lot of times I've seen new people try to match the colors with the default ones. So to pick the color that I just picked here, I hit the eyedropper tool. The eyedropper tool is I, or right here, and you can just click on the background and pick the color. You'll see how with this JPEG image, depending on where I click, I'll get a slightly different color, and that's because of how JPEG compression works. It's a whole bunch of tiny little pixels and dots, and each one's a slightly different color. So what we're going to do is we're just going to use the one that I made here by clicking in there, then clicking the new swatch, and then we're going to use this exact same color over here. You could eyedropper tool in the color from over here, but I find it's good to try to limit your palette to a few colors with vectors rather than try to use a ton of different colors. Otherwise you end up with this swatch palette that comes down to like here, and nothing looks the same. So you'll see how I did that. I'll do the same thing with this. If you look at this, this is a slightly darker color, but we don't honestly care about that. It's still almost the same color, so we're going to use this same color that we started with. Okay, then we can eyedropper tool in this color, click the pen tool, bring it in, and you'll see that I am overlapping it, whereas this piece should be above it. There's two ways we can fix this. We can click on this one and go to Object, Arrange, and Send to Back or Send Backwards, or Shift Control Bracket. Or we can click on this one and do the same thing, only do Send to Front. I tend to just do the shortcut key to send it to the back. You'll want to create a new swatch with that color. So now we've got these two colors for our swatches, and you'll see that this color here is basically the same color as over here, so we can put this in. I'm gonna make this into a you see how I put that color into the stroke by hitting Shift X. The reason I did that is so I could show you guys something. If you look here and around here, you see how we have these different darker colors. I'm not actually putting those in. Same with right here. The reason for this is because this is a zoom in of an image. This image was probably printed at, like, let's say like this side, and what these most likely are is smudges from the printing process, or overprint from the printing process. So more than likely that was not in the original image, thus we're not going to try to add it. Just something to keep in mind. The little highlight here we will add, because it looks like a nice little shot of, you know, reflection or highlight on there. So we can definitely add that. But these little dark spots in it, I think are actually going to make the image look a little worse, so we're not going to do that. And you'll notice that this image basically has 1, 2, 3, 4 different main colors to it. So, well, eyedropper. Well, I'll show you another thing that you can do here. You can use the color that you're using, fill in the shape that you want it, Shift X to throw your color into your stroke. If this your opposite side is, you know, just an empty fill, with that still selected, hit I to swap to your eyedropper tool, and then click in the background, and it'll fill it in with that color. And we can make a new swatch with that. There we go. If you look at this, there is one other place where you can see that it's kind of there, is right here. So we can put that there. All right. If we zoom out on this a little bit, you'll see that we have basically a slight gradient in here. See how we have a gradient from kind of a darker color up to a lighter color, to a darker color, to a lighter color throughout this image. So we've got multiple different colors in here. There's a couple of different ways we can do that. I'm going to try to cover multiple ways of doing it, but we're going to do that last. Actually, we'll probably do that second to last. We're probably going to do her eyes last, since that will be probably the most complicated thing. So we'll do her little antenna here next. This is one of those things where it's pure circles. So it's actually really easy to use the ellipse tool. I'm holding down Shift and Control and clicking in the middle and dragging it out like this. I'm going to hit Shift X to swap it. I'm going to click up on the arrow to bump it up a couple of points. So it's basically where we are. With it still selected, I'll hit I and click in there, and we get that same fill. We'll go back to our ellipse tool, or owl, and we can click and drag and hold down Shift and do kind of the same thing. We're trying to make it basically the right width here, which is about there. There, I'll bump it up and over a little bit. Shift X, I click in there. Then I'm going to hold Shift and Control and then bracket it back. And then we can do basically the same thing here. And we can just use 3 circles for that, and it'll look perfectly fine. I'm going to hide the background layer just to show you what it looks like so far. And then one thing you'll a lot of times want to do when you're doing these is remember how I made that whites layer where we had a big white square. I'm actually going to click on that, and if we look at the original art here, try to find a color that's not used anywhere in the image. In this case, we've got a red, we got a blue, we got a green. So a color that's not really used all that much in here is kind of a bright green. So we're going to choose a rather bright green, and we're going to turn the opacity up to 100 on that. The reason for this is that it makes it very easy to find things like this. And I'll show it to you in here in just a second. If you do something like this, say, where you've got a little color sliver here where you forgot to fill it in, making a very bright color that's different than everything else makes it obvious to see something like that has happened. So if we look around a little bit, you'll see that we haven't really done that. But this makes it a lot simpler to see. And if the image is more complex than the one that we're working on, that can be that can help save you some time. So just kind of an explanation of why I would do that. Right, we can do the little highlights in our hair now. These are kind of done kind of bluntly and in broad general strokes. So what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to try to redraw them as sharper shapes. So I'm not actually that interested in drawing these perfectly. I'm more interested in the general shape of them and seeing if they flow well. So if we put that in, you'll see that this is smooth. Both of the angles on both sides look good. And it doesn't exactly follow these little blunt shapes, but it's following the same general idea. So one thing we can do here is we can actually extend this line up to the top. We can do kind of the same thing here, except for we can make the far end tip of this one pointy. One thing we'll probably want to actually do is extend this one in up higher here. The reason being we want this curve to follow the same curve as this line, and if we stop at where this one stops, like right here, we're going to end up crossing it, and that is not going to look as good. So we're going to end up having to extend it a little bit, and I'll probably end up having to adjust it a little. So we're just going to try to get it close, bring it in. I'm actually going to bring in this layer and zoom in, and then we're going to look at the lines here. So if you look at this, we kind of want this line to follow the same line here. We got 2 adjustment bars here, which is 1 too many. That's fine. We can work with that. So this line is about even, this line is about even, this line is about even, and I kind of want to get this a slight bit thicker here. Adjustment bars, if you only have one, you generally want to get about halfway through not, extended farther. The reason for that is because it's adjusting the angle up to that point. So where the bar is this is going to be the farthest away point, and this is going to be the closest. So, alright, I'm going to bring this guy down just a little bit here. And there. And if we look at this, it's following the same kind of basic idea as it, but it looks a little nicer. You can do the same thing here. And one thing I don't like about this is this angle here does not look like it's following very closely. So I kind of want to make it look like there's a line here and there's a line here. And that looks a little closer to how it should, in my opinion. So we've got that in. We can then add the background color. So let's add this to our color swatches. Oh, I added it as a new group rather than a new swatch. So go ahead and do that. You kind of want to click on the background before you select a new color, because if I have this one selected in eyedropper, we're going to grab that color. So we want to kind of hit the arrow key, the direct selection tool, or the arrow key, so A or V, and click on the background before you do that. Fill in all of the hair here. And one thing we can probably do here is if I bring this up here, or just click from here to here, see how it's overlapping this? Remember how we want all these bangs to show up? We can hit Shift Control bracket and send it to the back, and this shape is now behind everything. So we didn't have to get really anal and trace this line because we knew we were going to hide it underneath of it. It doesn't take me any extra time, so it didn't bother me, but when you're not as good with the pen tool, recognizing where you can actually hide part of your shape during the coloring process can save you quite a bit of time. Same here. You'll see how we didn't try to trace this line with this one. We just sort of drew the line in and made sure there was no sliver here. We didn't do this. So you recognize that you could hide this piece behind this piece, and then this line here doesn't need to be perfectly accurate. So recognizing where you can hide stuff can be a good skill to learn. Okay, did that. Zoom in here. You'll notice that her hair has a little bit of a shine to it. We go from kind of a dark to a light. So I'm going to be trying to add that in a gradient, but we're not going to do it right now. We're going to finish up the non-gradient parts here. One thing, if you remember when we did this, remember how I put these lines on the inside rather than the outside, That's why we have kind of these black lines here. We're not going to be coloring them in at all. So one thing to remember on that. And see how we have all this black stuff up here? It makes it easy to hide that line in there. Remember, I'm not trying to trace this line perfectly. If somebody tells you it needs to be perfect, they're either working on a logo or they're crazy. Or the most anal person in the world. The problem with it being perfectly in sync with the other one, or with the original image, is all artists make mistakes. They wish were not there, but they've learned to let them go. The simple fact is, it would take them, if they're selling it, too long to fix all of the little errors that they make. Notice that I'm kind of drawing these little side slivers on here. We're going to actually... It's mainly because I like them. I like the highlight effect that you get from that. So we zoom out, and you'll see that we're getting pretty far into the actual coloring of this. And of this, you can see we've got even more. So we're basically to the point now where we're going to need to do some gradient. So we're going to start with her hair. Actually, we'll do the highlights in her hair here first. So those are not going to need any gradients. It's fine. I usually don't bring this into here. Yeah, I think that's better. Okay, so if we look at this, you can see that we have this color here, and then we have a much darker color. So what you end up doing here is, with nothing selected, you hit your eyedropper tool, and you find, the light color, make a new swatch with it. Grab your dark color and make a new swatch with it. Now that we have these two swatches, which are the last two we made, we're going to grab our pen tool. I'm just going to use any old random color. We're going to start with this dark red here. And we're going to make the shape. I'm using red because it's easier to see me trace this, but and it's easier to make sure that you have everything overlap. We'll send that to the back. Now we have our gradient palette up. If you don't have it up, it's Tools and then Gradient or Control F9 or Apple key F9. That's what I'm assuming it is. Make sure that you have the shape that you want selected, and then you can come over here and click on Gradient. That'll actually turn this to a gradient. Now, if you remember, I'm going to Shift X this to throw the gradient into the outline. You'll see that we had a dark to light to dark gradient. So if you look at the gradient here, these are our options. We have two currently. We have a black and we have a white. What these are is that this is where the white part is. This is how this little line here, this gray one here, is how it scales. So this is the 50% point. So this will, it'll start with pure black here, 50% between black and white, and then pure white, or whatever colors we use. So what we're currently interested in right now is getting 3 different colors. So we're going to grab our lightest color and throw it right in the middle here, because that's where we needed it, right in the middle. I'm going to grab our dark color and drag it over and throw it on the black one here. Then we're going to grab this one and drag it onto the white one. And now it's dark to light to dark. The problem we have here is that we need it to start here, have the this part here, and then dark here. So to do that, we're going to grab our gradient tool, or G, and you see how we get this line here. What we're going to do is we're going to click here, hold down, drag it all the way down to the bottom. If we move our mouse pointer over the top of that line, you'll see that we have the dark color here, the light color here, the dark color here. If you remember right, the middle part where it was, the light was right there, and then it was more of a harder gradient fade into it. So if we hide this, you see that it was much harder. So what we can do to do that is grab this piece here and drag it down. And the same with this one. We're grabbing the 50% piece and dragging it in. And you'll see that it's, much harder. You can also, as part of this, we probably want to get this to be more of a angle. And to do that, if we move the tip right over the end of it, you see how we turn the mouse pointer to kind of a circle. We can change the angle a little bit. This can be handy. I'm actually going to adjust it a little like that. There. Now if we zoom out, see that it's dark to light to dark here, with this little shiny part in the middle. One thing we can also do here is you can make a gradient swatch. So let's say we wanted to use this in here. We can do that. It'd be more likely to have it like that. If we look at the original, you can see that it's more likely to be like this, where it's more of the light color here and a darker at the tip here. So we basically just kind of cheated it by pulling the dark part up above, leaving the nice blue part in the middle here, while still leaving a little bit, so it gets a little darker on the tip here, and then the dark part down here. So hide that. That's what that's looking like. It's kind of a subtle effect. You're not actually seeing the gradient much in here, but I find the subtler effects like this actually are usually the more powerful effects. We have the same thing here, so we can add in this shape here. And you'll notice that if we swap this gradient part here is actually darker. One thing you can do is you can click on this part, and we need our color slider up. So we need view, and then where is our color? View. It's hidden underneath of those layers, so we can do view color there. Click on that part, this point on it, and then we've got the color guide here. I'm going to change it to HSB. The reason for that is because hue, saturation, brightness. This makes it really easy to adjust your colors. You have multiple different ones. RGB stands for red, green, blue. This is adjusting how much red is in the image. This is adjusting how much green. This is how much blue. So this is all the blue. This is 0 blue. This is all the green. This is 0. Red, green, blue is how your monitor displays colors. HSB stands for hue, which is the color itself. Saturation, how much of that color is in there, and brightness, how much black is in the image, basically. So this is, all the bright. This is all the dark. So what you do is you click on this point, and then you can, if we want to darken it up a little bit, we can click on this, the brightness, and pull it up a little bit, and that'll darken it up. So if we look at this, it looks pretty good. This is basically the same technique we're going to be using for the whole rest of this. It's pretty much almost done with the main coloring. We'll just take this color here and add it to this point here. Remember, I'm not trying to trace this perfectly. I'm just trying to make it look good. Alright, we're going to go ahead and do this. Now, if we look at this, we can see multiple different colors. The angle, if we look at it, the angle of the gradient is probably going to be like this, because we're going from, there's a dark line here, there's a light line here, and a darker line here, and a light line here. So we're going to need 2 different colors. And we're going to need the darkest color, which is right here. So I'll make a new swatch with that. And then the lightest color, which is right here. I'll make a swatch of that. Actually, this is probably the lightest up here, but I think that's basically the same color. Yeah, pretty much is. You can tell just by looking in the palette here. And looking back and forth. It's only a couple of points off, so we can just trash one of those and use it. Okay, now what we're going to do, I'm going to pick a different color than those two. And we're going to just go ahead and fill this all in. There is a way of doing coloring that involves less clicking and dragging, called using the live paint tool. I never use it because you can run into some odd issues with gradients and meshes that can cause you all sorts of weird issues. One thing you'll notice that I'm doing here when I'm doing this is I'm not being too anal about where all my lines are, and that's because we're sending it to the back. So all of this stuff here, we're basically hiding behind everything else, so it doesn't matter. Since we're going to be adjusting the face, one thing I am going to do here is we're going to make a cutout for the face. We could just hide this layer when working on the face, but it doesn't take a whole lot of extra time, and this will kind of, this will make actually just tracing the face shape really easy, because it's basically done. You can just trace like a square or circle around it and hide it in the back. You'll notice that right here, see how we have kind of a little clip here? That's actually an issue. So we can fix this. So I'm going to lock this layer. This is actually a good reason for me showing you that white box technique, is because we made an error with the inking. We can bring this up and we get rid of that line. We zoom in, no more little line. Alright, let's lock that layer, go back to our color layer, and what we're doing here, I'm going to grab my direct selection tool, or V. I'm going to click on this, I'm going to hold down shift, and click on the other one. We're going to come over to our Pathfinder tool. If you don't remember where it is, it's Window Pathfinder. And then we're going to do the minus front. And what happens is that shape that we just did, it cuts it out. Send it back to the back. And we can hide the background layer. And we can see that this is created. What we can do here, we can click on our gradient again. If you remember properly, we said that we needed 4 different shapes, and it was dark to light to dark to light, and then we were going to need another dark. So we're putting in all of our colored shapes. Hit our G, or click on our gradient tool here. Then drag it. Remember that we said that we wanted it kind of adjusted like this. I'm gonna turn our original art layer back on, and then I'm going to show you something kind of cool that you can do here. You can hold down Control. You see how this says toggles visibility mode? Hold down Control and click on that. Basically, you can see what everything looks like through here. So we know that our white point is right here. So if we look at here, you can see that we have the dark point there. So we're going to pull the white point up to there. And then the dark point, I believe, was here, if we remember properly. Dark point was actually a little higher. It was closer to here. And you can see that we can adjust this point here to make the white bigger. And if we see that it's probably want to pull this down a little bit, and that's close to how it would. If we look at here, we can see that it is actually light up on top. So we can, if you click and pull, you can drag the color off of it, and you saw that it was lighter up on top. So, but it was darker throughout here, so we can actually do that. Drag this white up to the top, and then drag this adjustment bar up. And we can go to this, and you'll see that the colors are pretty close to where they should be right now. Hide this, and you'll see that we have this long gradient here, and we took a guess on what different colors needed to be in there, and then we just clicked and dragged the colors to where they needed to be. Remember, we thought it needed to be kind of a slanted angle, which was right. We needed one less color than swatch than we thought we were going to need, but that's fine. We can make a new swatch of that. We're not going to need it, but you can always throw one in there. And then we have the face left to do. Okay, there's several different ways we can do the blush here. I'm going to show you a couple of different ways, including what I would consider the preferred way. and how I used to do it. This is kind of how I used to do it. I'll make a shape the right size. Basically, you make it slightly slower. This is how I used to do blushes, by the way. I'm going to go ahead and hide this layer so it's easier to see. Then we go to Effect, Blur, Gaussian Blur. You check the preview, and you'll see that that adds a little bit of a blur. You can click here and adjust how much. And then this gives it a little blur. Problem with this, if we zoom in, is see how pixelated this is? That's because this is applying a raster effect to it. The problem with that is that this is not a true vector right now. So if we zoom this up to really large, you're going to get little pixels in here where you're not going to get little pixels everywhere else. So that's kind of why a lot of people don't like using blurs. I don't mind them if you know what you're actually going to be using the image for. This is 100% right here. So this is rather large. One other thing, when we did the document setup, when we created the document, like if I go to File New, you show that the raster effect we had it high at 300 pixels per inch, or that basically means that this is a 300 dpi image, which means that it is rather high quality. So there'd be 300 pixels per inch. So inside 1 inch, if you printed this, there'd be 300 of the dots, which is pretty high. High quality, art prints are usually done at like 1200 or 600. Books are usually done at 150 to 300. So we're not going to be doing it this way. We're just going to go ahead and delete that. Another way that you can do this is to grab a ellipses, make it over the top of this, and then we can to do this, we're actually going to need 2 different colors. We're going to need this, so we'll make a swatch out of that, and we're going to need to pick what our background color is, which is our flesh color. So that. So what we're going to do here is we're going to click in here, make it into a gradient. We're going to remove 2 of the points, so there's only 2 of them. And we're going to pull in the flesh color. And we're going to pull in the pink. Then we're going to come over here and change the type from linear to radial. You'll see that we have these backwards. I actually did that on purpose. You can click here and drag them across. And you'll see that we have, this is currently a perfect circle. That's kind of off from where we want it. We're going to pull this over here so it's harder. Hit G to grab our gradient tool. Pull that out like this. And see this little black line here? We can adjust this into an oval. So if we hide this, you'd see that we're doing a gradient blush. This is actually considered still a vector because we're mathematically doing all of this. So if we zoom in all the way, you're not seeing any pixelation on it, which is the important part. So that's probably the easiest way to do the blushes. There's a harder way involving what's called gradient mesh, but we are not going to be doing that today. We will cover gradient meshes in the last tutorial I'm going to do, which is going to cover the more advanced techniques involved in coloring. This is just going to color basic flat coloring and simple gradients. So, another nice thing about doing this, since we have two of these, we can copy it and paste a second one in and realize that it needs to be a little wider, and then stick it right here. And then we can realize that it's also going to be behind the hair and just hide it behind the hair. Okay, so we know that this pink here is the blush color, but we've already done all the blush. This is the base color, and then we're going to need the shadow color. So go ahead and grab that. Pretty obvious point for where the adjustment bar is going to be. One thing you'll notice here is that these lines are not currently parallel, so let's make them parallel. And then we've got a couple of spots where we have that. We can add more if we'd like. I'm going to just try it currently with just this one. So we hide this back and see how much we have done. Alright, we're going to actually leave her the actual flesh color for last because we're going to do the eyes. The eyes are basically going to get their own layer. So we're going to lock the color layer, make a new layer, name it eyes. The reason for this is because the eyes are going to be on top of everything else, and I consider eyes kind of an important part of the image. Normally I would do the eyes very early within the process, but I've been trying to do this as a simple to hard, and I consider the eyes probably the hardest part about this whole image. A couple of things that you should know when doing eyes is I always prefer using the ellipse tool whenever possible. Basically the ellipse tool, or L, we'll go ahead and pop that out. We're trying to make everything look good. There's going to be a bunch of layering in here and some gradients. So we'll start off by realizing that the outline of her eyes is going to be black. So we'll just grab the pen tool. We're going to do what we did before, and whenever we draw a shape that should have something probably overlapping it, we are going to actually draw it as multiple shapes. Add a point in here. Want it to pull it down a little bit. I actually like doing it going in and making the curve nice this way, and then adding a point and pulling it down. A lot of times it's easier than trying to add the point here and then adjust the adjustment bars in multiple places. So that's why I do that like that. Again, I'm going to do kind of the same thing here, where I want this to curve in a little bit. So it's the easiest way to do that. You'll see that I'm not doing these as black shapes. That's because I want to be able to see them over the top currently. So you can adjust stuff a little easier like this. I'm just going to go ahead and merge these together, change it to black, change that to black, merge them together. You don't have to merge them. I like merging them just because then you can just click on it and have one object selected. And we're going to do the same thing to the other eye over here. If we look at this, the way that they did this in the original drawing is it looks like they laid down a black and then drew white on top of it. I'm actually going to do this a little bit different because the I don't like the way that it's shaped. So we're going to adjust this a little different. I'm going to try to make the curves a little less dumb. I'll hide that and see how the lines look. The lines look pretty good so far. Just to give you an idea here, quick, what... Oh yeah, can't do that actually. In the wrong layer. Okay. I'll show you later. Okay, so with this, we obviously need this little chunk here. Okay. Now with this, we're going to be working from basically front to back. You can also do back to front. I kind of like doing it front to back a lot of times, just because it makes it simpler to see what you're working on. So we obviously have the little highlight here, which is white. So I like drawing these as circles. You can, adjust them and make them, not perfect circles if you'd like, which is fine. I've just made that into a slight oval. You'll see here we have kind of a light to dark. So I with eyes, I actually get, I try to actually follow that pretty closely, because eyes are, whether you agree with me or not, they can be, why am I not grabbing the ellipse tool when I hit L? Whatever. Is usually the focal point of your image. So I'm going to click on the gradient, change it to linear, pull it over, we have the dark color here, the light color here, and dark color here. Grow the gradient, and it's here to here. We do the backwards. No, we can hide the eyes and see how that looks. This should be a little smaller. So actually make it a little smaller. Generally with highlights like these, you actually want them slightly smaller than what they are. We have the eye pupil here, so it's pretty obviously black. I'm trying to get the right length. So it's about the right. I'm actually going to extend it like this. I don't care about this overlap part here. I kind of want the tip to be correct, so we're going to do that. So I want this angle right. I don't care about the rest of them. So once this is proper, we can grab our direct selection tool here. And you'll see, that we have all of that. I'm going to go ahead and add a point here. And then we're going to pull the point up. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Point up. And we're going to go ahead and hide this and show you what it looks like. The main reason that I can get away with doing that is if we look at this, we have this highlight here, and then we have this whole image here, and this whole image here. And you can see that we have kind of a radial gradient that with a very harsh from light to this color to a darker color. So you can get away with kind of being a little sloppy with this. I would normally not say that you should do that, but we will make the curve a little better. Okay, so here we're going to do this highlight here. Again, I tend to always use circles if I can get away with it, for highlights on eyes. And basically make it the right shape, right in, and then we're going to use the clipping tool to clip off the minus front in the pathfinder. Just delete the part we don't need, send it to the back. We're actually going to send this to the back as well, so we can see the highlight here. Okay. And now we probably want to do this piece here. One way we can do this actually is we can grab this, copy it, paste it directly in front, send it to the back, use our direct selection tool to widen it out, bring it down, change it to a different color, swap it back. And there. Okay. Now, this is the right shape. It's hidden behind everything. We're going to actually be doing all of this in here with a radial gradient. So, what we need to do first is determine what our the lightest color at the bottom is. I'm actually going to use this one here. Then we need the color right next to the eye, which is this color. We need this dark brown, and we need black. So, click in here, change it to radial. We need the lightest color, that color, the dark brown, and then black. So that's basically how we're going to be doing all of this. What happened to the... Huh. How does that keep getting hidden? Whatever. Window, color. I probably hit one of the F keys. Okay. Another reason why we're doing this is, you know, that this one right here, you can do this. You hold down Alt. You can hide this. If we expand the eye layer, it makes it really easy to hide just the one part of it. So. So it's all, oh, why do you keep going to red? Alright, so it's all radial, and it's backwards, because it's going, so basically we end up doing this, and G to pull it out, basically it needs to be like this. We hide that, we can see how it kind of needs to go. So we got the black here, the brown is up here, this is right up here. Like that, and it's kind of pretty close. Basically, we're just hiding it to see if the angle is right. It's relatively close. I think that's about right. Yep. Okay. Remember, this is the lightest color, so it needs to be in closer to here. To bring that in farther, you kind of want to do it with this rather than with that color. And again, we kind of want this line here to be kind of harsh, and the way to get these harsher is to bring them closer and closer together. Then this is the black here. You can see that it's not a pure black. One way you can do that is doing that. Oh. There. We could probably pull this down farther. Okay, let's hide that and see how close it is. Pretty close. The main problem I have with this is I want this actually to be darker. So hide the background layer, see what that looks like. It looks pretty good. So that's we're doing a pretty complicated gradient here. So if you look at it, we've got a black, we've got a dark brown, we've got a lighter color, we've got a white, and we're playing with them, the angle and everything, in order to get it how we want. We can also, rotate this, adjust this in and out. We're not going to do that though, because I like how it looks right now. And then after we get all this done, we can look at this and see it. We're going from kind of that dark brown up to the black. So what you can actually do here is so let's do back, black, change this to linear. We only need 2. And do it like that. So we're going from, if we look at the gradient, I hit F, because it's right next to G. Going from the dark brown to the black up on top. If we hide the eye layer, it's pretty close. One thing we could do here to give this more of the, is add an extra point here. We hide that. You can see that's closer to the actual shape. Another thing we could do if we really wanted to, if we look at the original eye layer, is you got kind of, you know, the gradient from the pupil into that. We could try to do that using some gradients. We could actually click on this, go to Effect, and apply Gaussian blur, and that would blur it in. I actually kind of like doing that type of effect pretty often. You can highlight something, so hit Control H to hide the outlines so it's still selected, and then come over to our appearance palette. You see how we have this Gaussian blur. You can click here, preview it, and then change the amount of blur that you have in there. Which, you know, add a 9.4 pixel blur, and then you can hide the blur and show what the difference looks like. So gives it kind of a nice effect in there. You don't have to do that. I'm doing that because I like it. It does not need to be, you know, a perfect gradient here. We could also select this guy right here and add a Gaussian blur to it in order to fade it out a little bit, and then preview it and knock it down a little bit. If we look at the original, it's got a little bit of a blur to it as well. It's also slightly larger, so something like that. You can also do the same thing with this. If we had this, you can see that there's slightly amount of blur to it. Remember, you can always do Shift Control E to apply the last one you want. I have a hard time actually doing it with white because you can run into weird issues like that, so I don't actually do it very often. But you can do it here. I think white makes a very bad color to try to apply Gaussian blur to, so we're just going to leave those hard. So we've got that. Select our white. We're going to make the background here. Send it to the back. And there's a single eye. If we show this, you can see that the other eye is basically the same thing. So a lot of what you can actually do here is select a shape, copy and paste it, drag it over, adjust it to be proper, And the nice thing about copying and pasting all of this is that you're basically you're bringing in all of the effects that were in the other one. So a lot of times do some silly stuff with it. So one thing you'll see here is that this shape is higher up, so we can do probably something more akin to this. This should probably be closer to a circle than an oval. And looking at the original, just gonna go ahead and hide that. They got more of a goldy color in here. Well, I'm actually gonna add that. There. And again, I'm basically just saving myself a whole bunch of time by doing this. This I'm going to actually do as a white thing, so I'm basically going to draw that. Okay, one thing I'm going to do here that I have not done very much at all is I'm going to go to View and turn on the Smart Guides. The reason for that is because I want to lock my pointer to this point, to a point on this, and it's a very easy way of doing that. Reason for that is because I want to be covering up this white. So what I'm, the black part of this, so I'm locking it in because I kind of want it to follow the curve of this thing here, so it looks like it's belonged, and that's a easy way of doing that basically. And zoom in here, it looks like the curve is kind of basically following it nicely. So I can adjust that a little bit. And then we can do a little white behind everything else here. One thing you'll notice here, with this Gaussian blur on it, you'll see that we've got kind of this hard line here, which does not look the greatest. One thing you can do to try to fix that is to preview this and decrease the amount of blur. So you're getting less of that. You're still going to get a little bit, but it's less extreme. And then if we zoom out to the side that you're going to see it, it looks fine like that. So there's basically how I would do the eyes on this. This is not currently a true vector because I did use blurs. To turn these into true vectors, all you'd have to do is select this, the four shapes that we use blurs on there, and just click on the blur here and then trash them. If Fortnite will go away. And then now we need to just do the background. If you remember, we had this color. We're going to lock the eyes and go back to our color layer. Remember that we can be lazy and hide stuff behind because we're going to send it to the back. Zoom out a little bit. And then to 100%. And this is 100% what this image is going to look like. Simple image, but kind of cute. Took us a couple hours. It'll probably take you longer to do your first one. And If you have any questions on any of this, feel free to ask. In the link to the video, I'll have a Dropbox links to both the inks layer that I used and the finished AI file for this, so you can open it up and take a look at it, look at my layers and how I did everything. And thanks, and have a great afternoon there.